Working property management sounds better than it actually is. On paper, it's stable money, decent hours, nothing glamorous, but nothing miserable either. In reality, it means dealing with people who don't pay rent, people who scream at each other through the walls at 3 in the morning, people who treat a lease like a suggestion. The building I handled sat on the edge of Cleveland. A tired block of concrete and peeling paint everyone just called Martin Place. Even though that wasn't its real name anymore. Half the tenants paid late when they felt like it. The other half pretended they didn't exist when I knocked on their doors. And most of my time was spent filing eviction paperwork or fixing things no one else in the office wanted to touch. I got stuck with the building because no one else would take it. I can say this honestly, I didn't like any of them, except one. Doug Albertson. At least. At first. He moved into apartment 6, mid-40s, no family, worked from home, quiet type. The kind of guy who doesn't make eye contact unless he has to. When I showed him the unit, he told me he worked in behavioral correction. Said it casually, like he was talking about accounting. I help people break habits, he said. Smoking, anger, compulsions, anything repetitive. He smiled when he said it, not proud, not shy, just certain. He had groceries delivered, took his trash out late at night, never called maintenance. Never complained. In a building like that, someone like him felt out of place in the best possible way. Apartment 7, on the other hand, was a constant problem. A guy named Trevor Hansen lived there, early 20s, always drunk, always loud, always surrounded by people who looked worse than him. Parties every night, music through the walls. Strangers passed out in the stairwell. I talked to him more times than I could count. Nothing stuck. As long as he paid rent, my hands were tied. One cold afternoon, I ran into Doug on the stairwell. He was coming up, holding a small stack of mail, moving carefully like he didn't want to brush against the walls. We nodded, past each other. Then he stopped and called after me. Hey, do you have a minute? His voice was polite, but there was something tight underneath it. I checked my watch, already annoyed. Make it quick. He shifted his weight, eyes dropping to the floor. The man in apartment 7. He's very loud at night. I was wondering if you could speak to him again. I let out a short breath. I've tried. More than once. He doesn't care. Your best bet is to call the police and file a noise complaint. Doug shook his head slightly. I'd prefer not to involve them. He paused, then added, maybe I can help him. Behaviorally. I remember shrugging. Be my guest. That was the last complaint I ever got about Trevor Hansen. A week later, the noise stopped. No music, no parties, no strangers in the hallway. His rent started coming in early. I barely saw him anymore, if I did. He kept his head down and walked fast, like he had somewhere he needed to be and no time to waste. I figured maybe he'd gotten a job, or maybe he'd just burned himself out. Then other things started changing. The couple in apartment 3 constant screaming matches, throwing dishes, dragging their fights out into the hallway just stopped. No more shouting, no more broken glass. I'd go in for maintenance when they weren't home, and everything would be quiet. Too quiet, like the place had been abandoned mid-argument, unit by unit. The building started settling into something I'd never seen before. Silence. Not peaceful silence. Dead silence. I remember one morning, early in the month, I went to check. the rent drop box and saw Doug again. He was coming out of apartment 5 Joe Kimbler's place. Joe was a violent drunk, the kind of guy you avoided even during the day. Seeing Doug walk out of there felt wrong, like watching someone step out of a place they shouldn't have survived. I waved. "Morning, Doug." The building felt hollow, like sound didn't travel properly anymore. "Quiet day, huh?" I added, forcing a laugh. He smiled back at me. "Calm, steady. That's the goal," he said. Behavioral correction works when applied consistently. He adjusted the envelope in his hand. I spoke with Mr. Hansen and a few others. They're doing much better now. Something about the way he said applied stuck with me. Like it wasn't a conversation. Like it was a procedure. "Glad to hear it," I said, though I wasn't sure why. For a while, my job became easier, almost comfortable. No complaints, no calls, no chaos. Then August hit. Half the rent checks bounced. At first, I thought it was a bank error. Then I started calling. No answers. Voicemails stacked up. Texts unread. Emails ignored. It was like half the building had disappeared at the same time. Doug's name was on the list. That's when something in my gut started tightening. After a few days with no responses, I drove over. The building looked the same, but it felt different. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I knocked on doors one by one. Nothing. No movement. No voices. Not even footsteps behind the walls. I went upstairs and knocked on apartment 6. "Doug," I called. "You in there?" Nothing. I was about to leave when I heard it. A sound from inside. Muted. Like someone trying to make noise through something thick. I knocked harder. "Doug?" The sound came again. A low, strangled moan. My hands were already in my pocket, pulling out the master key before I realized what I was doing. The lock clicked too easily. The door opened, and the smell hit me immediately. Ammonia. Rot. Something sour and animal-like. Like a cage that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. "Doug?" I stepped inside, covering my nose. "You okay?" No answer. Just that same muffled sound. It was coming from the bedroom. I moved toward it, every step slower than the last. Like my body already knew what I didn't want to see. The door creaked when I pushed it open. The smell got worse. My eyes started watering. Then the room came into view. Dog cages lined along the walls. Inside each one, a person. Tenants. People I knew. Wrists and ankles bound. Mouths stuffed with cloth. Collars around their necks. Chains looped through the bars. Their eyes were wide, wet, alive. They were trying to scream, but all that came out were those muffled, broken sounds I'd heard through the door. In the center of the room was a small table, and on it, a note. I don't remember walking over to it, but I remember reading it. "I apologize for the inconvenience regarding the rent," it said. "Some interruptions were unavoidable. I will not be returning. As a gesture of appreciation for your property, I have completed behavioral adjustments for your tenants. They will no longer disturb you." My hands started shaking. I looked back at the cages. At the way they were all quiet, not fighting, not struggling, just staring, like whatever he had done had already worked.